It was quiet, a dark silence that absorbed all sounds until the world seemed to stop. Only occasionally was there a whisper of the wind rustling the leaves on the deserted road. On the edge of the forest stood an old house with closed shutters and a faded sign, "House of Horror." It was a house about which terrifying legends and rumors spread, but no one dared to step into its mysterious premises. The only daredevil was Martin, a young journalist who had the desire to uncover the truth behind the dark walls of this abandoned house. They told him that there lived a man named Dr. Malakov, who was considered strange and even mentally ill. However, his story was never made public, so Martin was determined to dig up the truth. One cold autumn day, he entered a house that seemed to be a confused labyrinth of abandoned rooms and corridors. This is where his ghost story began. Martin entered the house and found that the air inside was thick and heavy, as if the burden of the past hung in the air. He heard faint sounds that seemed to be soft whispers and the crackling of wood. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridors, sending an unpleasant shiver down his spine. Gradually, he began to discover rooms full of strange furniture, which was covered with a layer of dust and cobwebs. His eyes fell on an old piano in the corner of the room that seemed obsessed with its own playing. The keys moved without being touched, and the melody it emitted was haunting and melancholy. As he went through the old photos on the walls, he saw portraits of the people who once lived here. Their faces were shrouded in shadow, and their eyes emphasized deep suffering. In the heart of the house, he came upon an unlockable door, behind which was a dark cellar. When he opened the door, he suddenly found himself in complete darkness. Martin could only see a faint ray of light at the end of the corridor, which seemed to be a kilometer away. He slowly walked forward, his steps accompanied by mysterious sounds. When he reached the end of the corridor, he found an old stalactite staircase that led deep into the darkness beside him. The stairs led to the deep underworld, where the air was even thicker and the sounds even more mysterious. With each step, the darkness seemed to become a mass that surrounded Martin on all sides. He couldn't imagine what he might find at the end of those dark stairs, but his curiosity outweighed his fear. When he finally reached the bottom, he discovered a strange place. It was an ancient study, in which lay a broken table and broken laboratory glass. On the walls were framed photographs of experiments that seemed beyond the bounds of human morality. Martin frowned when he noticed that in one of the pictures there was a person whose face matched Dr. Malakov. Suddenly he heard a soft sound as if something was coming. A chill ran down his spine as he turned to see a shadow moving around the corner of the room. Something intangible and eerie slithered through the dark space, and all the hairs on Martin's body stood on end. He didn't know what it was, but he felt it was something that didn't belong in this world. Eyes watched him from the darkness, and his heart was beating so fast it hurt. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness that appeared to be a wrinkled reflection of a human. It was the character Dr. Malakova's, but her face was deformed, and her eyes protruded from their sockets. Martin closed himself in terror and tried to return to the stairs, but his legs refused to obey him. The creature was closing in on him as his fear escalated to an unbearable level. As the darkness touched Martin, his consciousness turned into a kaleidoscope of bad memories and suffering. Days passed, but Martin never came back. The house of horror was left abandoned and surrounded by secrets that no one could unravel. The legend of the haunted house spread, and people avoided the place as if it were death itself. At night, however, a soft whisper of the wind rustling the leaves on the deserted road could sometimes be heard from somewhere. And somewhere in the darkness of the house, the deep and melancholy note of the piano seemed to resound, shrouded in unknown suffering.